unpredictable, and what we are looking for as metric is the average. And we compute the average based on 3 ingredients. The skip time, which is determined by the performance of the cache by itself, whenever the information is there. The miss rate, which is the probabilistic part, and we are discussing about how to diminish the miss rate, because the miss rate is very important. The lower the miss rate, the lower the contribution of the slow memory where I'm looking for information in case I'm not finding it in the cache. And then also the miss penalty, which is the performance of the other level, which is main memory or, I don't know, another cache. And we saw that there are a couple of things that we can do, and we have to try to deal with reducing compulsory, capacity, and conflict. And then we discuss some ways to do that. Let us look now to the next parameter in the discussion, and the next parameter is the miss penalty. Now, with the miss penalty, we have a problem. I mean, the technology is actually evolving against our expectation. Remember the diagram with the speed of the logic and the speed of the memory? The distance between them is getting larger as the technology is evolving. Then we have to try to do things, because by the evolution of the technology, this parameter is actually getting worse. And there are a couple of methods to do that, and we'll talk about them. And we'll start with multi-level caching. The idea behind the multi-level caching is to make a gradual transformation or a gradual change from the slow to the fast memory in the same way you have it in a system like the gearbox of the car. You have a part which is moving very fast and another one which is moving slow. You don't put direct connection with one wheel. You have a couple of them. It's a reduction system, if you know how the gearbox is working. Do you know that? Have you ever saw one? No. It's nice to look. Do you drive a car? Okay. But some bikes even have that in the wheel. There are some bikes which have some kind of gearbox. Okay, then the principle in here is the same as in the gearbox. I'm starting with a system which is slow, which is my main memory. I have the cache which is very fast, and I'm kind of covering the gap by putting intermediate steps. And in this way, it's not an abrupt change, but it's slow. And my way from the main memory towards the cache is smooth. And if I do that, what I have is that I'm taking kind of advantages of both things. I have a fast one, which is close to the register file, small but fast. And I have an intermediate one, which is not that fast but is large, close to the main memory. The idea is that I will look in the small one and I can do that fast. And whenever I'm not finding there, I will look in the big one, which it's assumed due to the capacity to have the information that I'm looking for most of the time. And also remember, those are processes which are decoupled. Then I'm doing things in the big cache in order to kind of prepare things for the request from the small cache. Then this decoupling, which I'm telling you about very often, it's fundamental, because this means parallelism. This means that I can hide latency of things if I'm preparing in advance, right? If you don't prepare for the exam and you look in the book to find an equation, it will take you a long time, right? The equation is there. It's the same story here. Actually, you are happy you don't have an exam. I should have changed that.
No.
Would have been better with an exam?
No.
No? Why not? Exams are beautiful.
Yeah.
You just learn the book. Yeah, closed book, simple questions you just have to remember.
Yeah.
No. Open book, nasty questions, not nice. Oh, by the way, I got some more emails about groups, but still, the reaction is very low. I think I had one solo person and 2 students looking for a partner, and I did the matching. I did not hear if that happened. There is still one solo person, one solo student looking for a group. Okay, I also get some emails with the papers. I will react to those probably in the weekend. Not only students are supposed to study in the weekend. Some professors work also in the weekend. Okay, now, what is happening is that I'm applying now in a recursive way the principle of computing the average access time. Then I look in the cache. If I hit there, I have the hit access. If I'm not hitting there, which is now with a certain probability, I have the miss. But now the miss is not the miss of the main memory. It's the access time for hit in the second cache plus the probability to miss in the second cache multiplied with the cost of the miss. And this is the equation. You see, hit rate level 1, miss rate multiplied with whatever. And if I have 3 levels, I can apply the same principle. And the more levels I get, you know, the more smooth the transfer and the mitigation of those is happening, you know, in a more gradual way. But the more levels I have, the more complicated things I get there. And it's always a compromise between what you invest and what you get. Now, from the point of view of the system, what is very important is what we call the global miss rate. And the global miss rate is related to the fact that from the point of view of the processor, I don't care about the misses which are happening inside the system. What I care for is how many times an access will miss. Because I may have different misses in different caches, but for me as a user, you know, I'm the consumer, I just want to find the milk in the shop whenever I need the milk, right? I don't drink milk, but I give an example which is adapted to the Dutch culture. Do you guys drink milk?
Yeah, of course.
No.
You should.
Yes?
Be.
Why?
It's healthy.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I think so.
No, I don't think so, and I can even
Why not?
explain you why.
Why?
Because the milk is designed for young animals. Then the
No.
chemical composition and all the things in the milk are produced with the purpose of feeding young mammals. Most of the adults are actually intolerant to milk.
Yeah,
Okay.
it could be, but you need milk for your skeletal bones. Yeah.
Yeah, you can eat cheese. You can eat other things which do have that. But essentially speaking, the nature is doing things with very specialized. And we are creating, you know, we are artificially making the cow to produce milk for us.
Okay. Yeah. I can understand.
It's not a problem, you know. You may drink milk if you like it. I prefer wine
And
for lunch.
the milk.
One.
You know, in the Latin cultures, for lunch, you drink wine.
Yeah.
You don't drink a bottle or a barrel, but this is the traditional way to have lunch. This will happen if you go in France or in Italy and you have lunch. This is what people will drink. In the Netherlands, you drink milk. When I have project meetings, my other partners from Europe are not very happy about the Dutch lunches. Okay. Now, then basically by building such a hierarchy, I'm hiding the latency, and I'm making a gradual transformation between a fast system and a slow system. And in this way, I'm solving the miss penalty. Now, what can I do more in order to deal with miss penalty? You know, when I have a miss, what is happening is that the cache controller will go into the next level, which can be another cache or the main memory, and will bring a cache line. And a cache line, as we discussed, is longer than one location. Now, I can wait until the entire cache line is in the cache, or I can start the execution whenever the item that I'm looking for is already available. And the cache controller can help me for that. Okay, most of the time what I'm looking for is the first item in the cache line. But if the addresses are not well aligned, I may look for this item. And the cache controller, what can do is to bring this item first, give it to me, let me run, make me happy, and then fill the rest of the cache line. And in this way, I'm not getting the penalty of bringing the entire cache line. Then I get my item, I do the calculation, the rest will happen while I'm doing the calculation. Presumably, when I do the next access, the full cache line will be available in the cache.
Just how is this time delay? The rest of, because it's just other beats, right? So you'd have
What time delay?
like you don't want the time delay of all the other beats in this
Then
line, right?
What I want is I want to get from the main memory a cache line. The cache line has 4 items, which means 4 access to the main memory, because the connection between me and the main memory is wide as, let's say, a word. Now, instead of waiting for those 4 access to happen, I am actually, the controller will give me the blue block, which may be, you know, the 3rd item in the line, and then will bring the others while I'm doing calculations. That's one way. There is another way too, because most of the time the connection between the cache and the main memory is wider, and I may bring 2 items per clock. But the idea is to decouple things, then to give you what you want, and then you can continue your road, and then meanwhile I'm preparing to complete the calculations. It may still happen that next time when I'm looking, the controller is not ready, and I may still have some kind of delay. But probabilistically speaking, this may help.
A question. This doesn't really happen in general purpose microprocessors, does it? Because most
If you
theorems.
speak louder,
Sorry. This doesn't really happen in general purpose microprocessors, does it? Because most theorems will answer to requests for half cache times and full cache times.
yes, they will answer, but this answer will be most of the time pipeline, and then I can choose which item to be first. And then if I make that choice, you know, I speed up things a bit. Then it's like an out of order execution. Okay. Now, this is another thing which may help me, which is to give priority to read over write in a miss. Now, depending on how my cache is organized, things may happen into different ways. If I have a write-through, then when I'm writing to the cache, I'm writing to the main memory also. Then what I have to do is I am doing the write, and I go for another read, because the write will happen and it's not my problem. And I go for another read. Now, this has a small problem. I'm reading something, and I do not really know whether or not the value that I'm looking for, it's already in the memory or it's in the right buffer. If it is in the right buffer, I have to read it from there. Okay? Then when I do that kind of things, then I give priority to reads on a miss. Then I check first the write buffer. If the information is there, I'll take it from there. Otherwise, I will go and read it from the memory. Okay? And in this way, again, I'm doing overlap of accesses. If I am doing on write back, then I have the same kind of situation and I'm getting some kind of time for the processor. Then basically all the things that we discussed thus far are based on the fact that I'm doing a bit of a speculation, but not speculation like for branch prediction, but speculation in the sense that I'm doing things faster or earlier, which will give me what I want, and I let the rest to complete without seeing the full penalty. Now, this is a trick which prevents the write buffer to get full whenever you actually write locations which are sequential in the memory. Okay, then a write buffer is organized in this way. This is an example. Then I have an address, and then I have in this address some values. That's the way the write buffers are. Now, when I do things like, writing locations which are consequent, what I can do, you see, those locations, 100, 108, 16, 24, are actually consequent in the memory. Then instead of remembering the address and the value explicitly, whenever they are consequent, I'm remember the address, and then the addressing will be kind of implicit and put them one after the other in this way. Due to the locality principle, this will help me to prevent the write buffer to be full. As it was here, you see, I have 4 values. If I memorize the address and the value, it's already full the buffer. Due to the fact that they are consequent in memory, I can do that. And then you see I'm just using 1 entry in the write buffer. I'm using the same amount of hardware for the write buffer. There is a small trick that I have to do. I have to check the address. If the address is consequent to something that I already have in the write buffer, and if there is room in the write buffer to put it there, I'll put it there. Okay, like you see, I have this, and then it's coming this. I could put it here, or I could see, but this is after this location. Then put it here. And this will prevent the write buffer to get full, which will let me continue the calculation without stalling, because when the write buffer is full, I have to stall. And in the top of that, I also have a better communication with the memory, because as I mentioned already, the bus between the cache and the main memory, it's wider than the bus between the processor and the cache. What I would like to do is to get one cache line in one transaction. That's sometimes too expensive, and I'm doing some kind of pipelining, but still I can do this as one write transaction, which might be longer a bit, and that will be better than doing 4 transactions. Okay. Okay, that's a trick which is trying to alleviate the problem of the direct map caches. When I have the direct map cache, if there is a conflict, I have no choice. There are no ways. Then if I have a conflict, I have to kick out the line which is in the cache and then replace it with the new line. What the victim cache is doing is storing temporary that evicted line in a smaller cache. Then the evicted line, I can call it a victim, right? Because was the victim of the conflict. And then I take it, and instead of letting it disappear, I'll put it in a small cache, which is this one. Then, and it was proved that this can help quite well. Then just 4 locations like this can solve most of the conflicts for such a cache. This is based on calculations, on experiments. And some of those machines do have a victim cache. The operation principle is this. I'm looking in the cache. If there is a hit, I'm happy as usual. If there is a miss, I'm looking now in the victim cache. Is the line that I'm looking for a victim of a previous access? If it is, it's in the victim cache. And then if it's in the victim, I can get the data and I can bring it back into the cache. Because if I need it now, probably I will need it in the future, and it was evicted just by an accident. If it is not there, I'll do, you know, the usual process further, and I will also kick it out from the victim, because it's the second time when I don't need it, right? Okay. Now, those are the kind of techniques which we are using to deal with the miss penalty. Then we finish also with the second term. And we also do things which are a bit more advanced and a bit more speculative. And this one is a bit of an out-of-order execution. What I'm doing is that I have a system which now it's more complex. And if I have a miss, I can continue looking in the memory in the same way I was doing with instruction scheduling in superscalar processors. In a superscalar processor, if I have a dependency, I'm not waiting for that instruction to be solved. I go further and I'm trying to see other candidates. I can apply the same principle here, and I can have non-blocking caches, which will allow me to continue and to look for other locations when I have a miss. Then I can do things in a speculative mode. What else can I do? I can also do prefetching, and the prefetching can be done under control of the hardware or under the control of the software. Some processors do have prefetching instructions which allow the compiler or the programmer to say, now you should bring some information from the main memory. Now, when I look at this hit under miss kind of scenario, then I have a non-blocking cache, and I can allow now, if I have a miss, to look for another location and I have a hit, or I can allow to do that after 2 misses, or after 64 misses. It's a bit like the issue of the superscalar machine. You can see how the performance is improving. There are programs like Aura where nothing is happening. I mean, it's not really helping. But there are programs where this can help me a lot. And what I can see is that the difference between going for a hit after 2 misses and a hit after 1 miss, it's large. It's helping me a lot. Going from 2 to 64 may bring some advantage, in some cases, some substantial advantage, but it's kind of a lot more expensive. Because if I allow for 64 misses to happen and then at the 65th axis I have a hit, those misses I have to deal with them in a certain way, because those misses I'm not letting them die because they are not disappearing from me. I still have to solve them. And somehow from this diagram what I can learn is that if I go for a non-blocking cache, and if I allow to try the third time after I have two misses, that will be quite okay performance-wise. As you see, it's pretty good. In some applications, this is not helping me at all, but in most of them, it's giving me some help. Now, what you see is that if you look at the last part of the diagram, I see espresso, I see compress, I see AQN, whatever. Those are most likely integer benchmarks, right? We were discussing about them also when we were dealing with dynamic scheduling of instruction. And you see that for those guys, things are not really working. The relation is the same story as for instruction level parallelism. For floating point, there is more room for parallelism, while for integers, the room for parallelism is a bit limited. Remember, I asked you about a diagram, and you didn't want to help me. I know you don't want to help me because you want to try to check whether I understand or not, right? That's the point. Now, prefetching, it's another technique, and what you do by prefetching is that instead of bringing one